Child models, when did you realize your childhood wasn't normal? When I was 7, sitting in an ice bath for 30 minutes to make my skin paler, my mom not letting me out despite my lips turning blue. Stop shivering or we'll start over, she said, scrolling through tomorrow's call sheet. The client specifically requested porcelain skin. The doorbell rang. 30 more seconds, my mother said, not looking up. The doorbell rang again, harder. Child Protective Services. We need to speak with you about your daughter. My mother's phone slipped from her hand, splashing into the ice water. Water dripped from my body as she wrapped me in a towel that was too small, meant for my face only. Before you think of tattletaling, remember what we did to your baby teeth, my father hissed as he pushed me toward the door. The CPS worker was a woman named Favor. A photographer sent us concerning photos from yesterday's shoot, bruising patterns and significant hair loss. My mother positioned herself behind Favor where only I could see her face twist into that look that meant the garage floor tonight. I forced my mouth into the pose from my comp card. Sweet, innocent, marketable. Everything's wonderful. I love modeling more than anything. Favor pulled out her tablet, zooming in on a behind-the-scenes photo. Why are there hand-shaped bruises on your arms covered with body makeup? I bruise easily. It's genetic. My mom helps cover them so clients don't worry. She swiped to another image. And the bald patches? My hand instinctively went to the clips holding my extensions. Just trying a new look. Very editorial. You're 10 years old. Why aren't you in school? My mother cut in. We homeschool between bookings. She earns more than you make in a year. Would you waste time on multiplication tables if you were banking 6 figures? Favor asked to see my schoolwork. My father laughed. We don't waste money on books when she could be practicing her poses. His hand moved to his belt, the way it did when he was about to prove who owned who. Favor's expression hardened. I need to speak with your daughter alone. Absolutely not, my father said. We don't leave her with strangers. Favor held up her badge. Refusing will require me to involve law enforcement. My mother's nails dug into my shoulder through the towel. We'll be right outside, sweetheart, she cooed in her client voice. But her whisper was different. Remember, we made you. We can unmake you. They left the door cracked. I could see my father's shadow. Can you read this consent form? Favor handed me a paper. After 30 seconds of silence, I whispered, I love reading, because that's what normal kids said. Can you write your name? My hand shook holding the pen. I knew it started with an E. Or was it an A? The letters swam like they always did. Everything's perfect here, I said louder, knowing they were listening. Favor leaned close. I'm going to ask your parents for complete privacy now. My father burst in. You can't. I can, and I will. Or we can wait for the police. Your choice. They left. Favor shut the door completely. The click of the lock sounded like freedom, but I could hear them pacing, like caged animals deciding whether to eat their young. Show me where you sleep. I led her to my room, the one with the white furniture and ring light setup. This is lovely. Where do you actually sleep? The lie was right there, but I was so tired. My head hurt from the ice bath. My feet hurt from yesterday's heels. Everything hurt. The garage, I whispered and started crying. She followed me out there. 2 yoga mats on concrete. A space heater that didn't work. My portfolio propped against the wall. My smiling face mocking me from 100 different angles. Favor took pictures of everything. I knew I'd pay for this later. If there was a later. A doctor arrived within an hour. My parents paced outside making calls to my agency, threatening to sue everyone. The exam revealed everything. Stress fractures in both feet from standing in heels since I was 6. Malnutrition despite the healthy lifestyle my parents promoted to casting directors. Patches of scalp where hair would never grow back. Too much bleaching. Too many extensions ripped out in frustration when I couldn't hold a pose. When did you last eat a full meal? The doctor asked. I've been on ice cubes for 3 days. Beach shoot coming up. My stomach had stopped hurting yesterday. That's how I knew it was working. Favor looked through my portfolio, comparing recent photos to my early work. You've lost significant weight. I nodded. Size 00 earns more than size 2. Do you have friends? Play dates? Normal kid activities? I had friends at the agency once, before I started booking too much. My parents said jealousy is bad for business. My voice kept getting smaller. Each truth felt like pulling out another tooth. Favor went to confront my parents while the doctor stayed with me. Through the door, I could hear everything. The explosion I'd been waiting for my whole life. She can't read because you don't send her to school. She's covered in injuries. My father exploded. After what he did next, Favor was never the same. I can't hear anything after the sound of my father hitting Favor. Just this ringing that fills up my whole head like I'm underwater. Someone is screaming and I realize it's my mother. But she's not screaming at him. She's screaming at Favor for provoking him, for pushing too hard, for making him do this. The ringing gets louder and I watch Favor crumple against the doorframe, her body sliding down slow like she's melting. Blood spreads across her forehead in a line that looks too bright, too red, like the lipstick clients wanted me to wear for holiday campaigns. I think this is my fault for not being good enough at pretending everything was wonderful, for letting her see the garage, for answering questions wrong. If I'd just performed better, held my smile longer, said the right things in the right order, none of this would be happening. A neighbor must have called 911 because suddenly there are police everywhere, their radios crackling with codes I don't understand, numbers and letters that mean something to them but sound like another language to me. My father is face down on the lawn with handcuffs on, still yelling about his rights and how we're a respectable family, how this is all a big mistake. Grass stains spread across his white shirt, and I think about how mad he'll be later about the stain, about the dry cleaning bill. My mother switches to her client voice, the one that books jobs and charms casting directors, telling officers this is all a big misunderstanding while her eyes lock onto mine and promise me the garage floor forever if I say one true word. Her face does two things at once, smiling at the officers while her eyes go flat and cold at me, and I know that look better than I know my own reflection. An ambulance takes Favor away on a stretcher with an oxygen mask over her face, and I can see blood soaking through the white bandage they wrapped around her head. A female officer kneels down to my level, her knees cracking, asking if I'm hurt, if anyone touched me, if I need medical help. I automatically smile my comp card smile, the one that's supposed to look sweet and innocent and marketable and say I'm perfect. Everything's perfect. I'm fine. She doesn't smile back, just stares at me like she can see through the performance and wraps a blanket around my shoulders, even though it's not cold outside. They put me in a police car, but I'm not in trouble, the officer explains. They're just taking me somewhere safe while they figure everything out. I don't know what safe means anymore because the garage was supposed to be temporary, and temporary turned into 2 years, and my parents were supposed to love me, and love turned into ice baths and pulled teeth. The hospital exam room is too bright, fluorescent lights like a photo shoot but wrong, buzzing overhead in a way that makes my head hurt worse. A doctor with kind eyes and gentle hands documents every injury while I stare at the ceiling tiles and count them to keep from thinking about Favor's blood. 26 tiles with little holes in them like someone poked them with a pencil over and over. The doctor writes things down and takes pictures and measures things with tools that beep. And someone says 32 stress fractures in both feet. Malnutrition severe enough that they wanted to admit me, except they need the bed for Favor. The doctor's voice gets quieter when she photographs my scalp, pulling back the extensions to show the bald patches where hair got ripped out. So many times the roots just gave up. She asks who did this like she doesn't already know the answer is me for not holding poses long enough, for fidgeting during 12-hour shoots, for being difficult when clients needed perfection. They take me to an emergency shelter that night where everything smells like industrial cleaner, that sharp chemical smell that burns the inside of my nose and makes my eyes water. The bed has a real mattress, not concrete, but my body doesn't know how to sleep without cold seeping up through my spine. I lie there waiting to shiver, waiting for my mother's voice to say 30 more seconds, but it doesn't come and somehow that's worse. Other kids are crying in other rooms, and I want to tell them to stop shivering or we'll start over, want to warn them that crying ruins your face and ruins your booking rate. But that's my mother's voice in my head and I bite my tongue until I taste metal, that copper penny flavor that means I bit too hard. Morning comes too bright through windows without blackout curtains, and a woman brings me clothes that aren't designer, just soft and clean and normal. She tells me Favor is in the hospital, stable but hurt, and I hear myself ask if it's a skull fracture before I can stop the words from coming out. The woman's face changes, her eyebrows pulling together, and she asks how I knew that, how I knew what kind of injury to expect. I realize I wasn't supposed to hear the whispered conversations last night between staff members talking outside my door, wasn't supposed to understand that my father might have killed someone because I couldn't perform well enough to keep him calm. A detective with a gentle voice and a notebook sits across from me in a room full of toys I'm too old for, stuffed animals and blocks meant for little kids. He asks questions I've been trained to deflect, questions about home and school and how my parents treat me. I open my mouth to say everything's wonderful, to perform the script I've memorized, but instead I hear myself say, I don't know how to answer that, which feels like the first true thing I've said in years. He asks if I'm afraid, and I perform my smile, the one that's supposed to make adults feel better, but I watch his face fall instead of relax. Something in me breaks a little bit more because even strangers can see through me now, can see past the performance to the broken thing underneath. There's a court hearing I don't attend, but people talk about it anyway, using words like temporary removal and dependency petition that sound like the legal version of unmake. Someone tells me my mother's lawyer argued this is overzealous intervention, that I'm a successful child with opportunities most kids never get, conveniently forgetting to mention the garage or the ice baths or the baby teeth pulled early because a client wanted a gap-toothed look for a campaign. The judge orders me placed in foster care pending investigation, and I don't know if that means I'm safe or just a different kind of owned. If foster care is another version of the garage with different rules, I'll have to learn. Marlena's house smells like coffee and something baking, nothing like the garage or the chemical smell of hair products and bleach that I'm used to. She shows me a bedroom with a door that locks from the inside, not the outside, and hands me a towel that actually wraps all the way around my body instead of just covering my face. I stand in the bathroom holding that towel and cry for the first time since the ice bath. Great ugly sobs that would ruin a shoot and cost us the booking. No one yells at me to stop. No one threatens to start over. No one tells me I'm wasting time that could be spent practicing poses. Breakfast is scrambled eggs and toast. Real food that smells warm and normal. And my stomach cramps so hard I double over because I've been living on ice cubes for 3 days preparing for a beach shoot that will never happen now. Marlena doesn't push, doesn't force me to eat or threaten me with the garage, just wraps the eggs in foil and says they'll be here when I'm ready. I eat them cold an hour later in tiny bites that my body barely remembers how to process, my stomach confused by actual food after so long on nothing. She tells me it's okay to go slow, and I almost don't believe her because slow has never been okay before. Slow meant starting over. Slow meant the garage floor. Slow meant my father's belt and my mother's disappointed face and losing bookings to girls who could hold poses longer. The next morning, I wake up shivering even though the room isn't cold, my body remembering concrete under yoga mats instead of this soft mattress. Marlena makes pancakes, and I eat 3 bites before my stomach cramps, still confused by real food after days of ice cubes. She wraps the rest in foil without saying anything, and I watch her move around the kitchen, waiting for the moment when she gets tired of me being broken. On my second day, she goes to the garage to get boxes of holiday decorations, and I freeze completely in the doorway, my whole body locking up like someone hit pause on a video. My breathing stops and I can smell concrete and hair glue and the cold that never left even with the space heater running. Marlena looks back at me and her face changes. Not angry or annoyed, just understanding. She sets the boxes down and picks them up again, carrying them past me to the attic ladder instead. She doesn't ask what's wrong or make me explain or tell me I'm being difficult. She just climbs the ladder with the boxes, and I stand there thinking, maybe this is what safe means. This feeling of someone adjusting their world to fit around your broken pieces, without making you apologize for being broken. Later that day, someone comes to take my phone, the one my parents gave me that they monitored every second. I hand it over and suddenly I can't check my comp card comments or scroll through my agency's Instagram or read the client feedback that told me if I was good enough to keep. The silence feels like failure, like I'm disappearing without constant proof that I'm marketable. I catch myself staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror that afternoon, tilting my head to find my best angle, sucking in my stomach even though no one's watching. Marlena walks past and stops, comes back, leans against the doorframe. She suggests maybe I could just look at my face without performing for it, says it so gently like she's offering instead of criticizing. But I don't know how to do that. Don't know how to see myself without assessing my commercial value, without checking if my smile is symmetrical enough, or if my skin looks clear enough to book. I turn away from the mirror and she doesn't push, just squeezes my shoulder and walks away. New clothes arrive the next day, delivered in plain bags without designer labels. Marlena pulls them out and there are no size tags, no brand logos, just soft fabric in colors I've never worn because pastels photograph better than jewel tones. I hold up a navy blue sweater and immediately check the mirror to see if I look marketable in it. My brain does this automatic calculation, this assessment of whether this color makes me bookable or forgettable. Marlena asks what I'm thinking, and the truth comes out before I can stop it. I tell her I don't know if I'm pretty enough without the right clothes, and her face does something that makes me wish I could take the words back. She looks so sad, not disappointed in me, but sad for me, and I realize that's somehow worse. School enrollment happens on a Thursday, and the paperwork asks for my name in a blank line. I stare at it for 30 seconds, the pen shaking in my hand. I know it starts with an E, or maybe an A, or maybe something else entirely. The letters swim and rearrange themselves like they always do, like they're mocking me for being too stupid to know my own name. The intake counselor watches me not write anything, and her face does that thing adults' faces do when they realize how bad it really is. I automatically say I love reading because that's what normal kids say, but we both know it's a lie. She takes the pen from me gently and asks me to tell her my name out loud, then writes it for me. I watch the letters appear and try to memorize them, but they're already scrambling in my brain. My first therapy appointment is the next day with Cal, who has kind eyes and an office that smells like coffee instead of hairspray. But there's a ring light in the corner and my chest gets tight the second I see it. All the air leaves the room and I'm 7 again, standing under hot lights while someone adjusts my chin angle. Cal notices me staring and asks if I want him to move it. I can't answer because no one has ever asked me what I want in a room with lights before. No one has ever treated my comfort like it matters more than the shot. He moves it anyway without waiting for my answer, unplugs it completely and puts it in a closet. Something in my chest loosens enough to breathe and I sit down in the chair he offers. That night I lie in Marlena's guest room, my room she keeps saying, like I'm allowed to claim space. I remember my mother's whisper from that first day, remember her saying, "We made you, we can unmake you." I catalog all the ways they threatened to unmake me over the years. The baby teeth pulled early for a gap-toothed look. The ice baths to make my skin paler. The garage floor when I couldn't hold poses long enough. The food withheld when I couldn't fit into sample sizes. The extensions ripped out in frustration when my hair didn't photograph right. They made me into a product and I believed they could unmake me back into nothing, could erase me if I stopped being profitable. But lying here in a room with a lock on the inside, with a lamp that stays on because I asked for it to, I wonder if maybe they were wrong about what I'm made of. I decide something that feels small but huge at the same time. I'll answer one question honestly in every meeting with officials. Just one. No more performing perfection for people trying to help. It's a tiny rule, barely counts as rebellion, but it feels like taking back one small piece of myself. The next morning when Marlena asks how I slept, I say bad. I kept waking up cold, instead of great thank you. I watch her face shift into understanding instead of disappointment, and realize honesty doesn't always lead to punishment. My first day at actual school is terrifying in ways photo shoots never were, because there's no script, no one telling me where to stand or how to smile or what expression to make. They place me 2 grades below where I should be for reading, and I sit by the door watching the exit like it might disappear if I look away. The other kids stare at me and I automatically find my angles, position my body the way that photographs best. A girl asks if I want to share her crayons during art time, and I don't know how to answer because no one has ever offered to share anything with me without expecting something back. I take a red crayon and hold it like it might explode. The supervised visit happens the following week at a family center with cameras mounted in every corner and a social worker sitting against the wall taking notes. My mother arrives carrying a designer jacket, the kind clients provide for shoots, soft leather that costs more than most people make in a month. She tries to put it on me, saying it's for when I come home, for my next booking. Like this is all temporary. My hands shake as I leave it on the chair between us. The social worker writes something down and my mother's smile goes sharp. That look that used to mean the garage floor. I know I'll pay for this refusal somehow, someday, but right now I'm paying for it by choosing myself instead of choosing to be marketable. She asks about school and I tell her it's hard, I'm learning to read, and she flinches like I've said something embarrassing. There's a court hearing I don't attend, but Gregory tells me about it later. Judge Stephen Rainey reads my injuries into the official record, his voice steady as he lists them. Stress fractures in both feet from years and heels. Malnutrition despite the healthy lifestyle my parents promoted. Educational neglect severe enough that I can't read or write my own name. Scalp damage from extensions and bleaching. Something he calls severe psychological conditioning. My parents' lawyer calls it overzealous conditioning for a competitive industry, like there's a normal amount of zealous that includes ice baths and garage floors and pulled teeth. The judge orders continued foster placement, and my mother leaves the courthouse crying for cameras that aren't there, performing grief for an audience that doesn't exist. My mother's Facebook post goes live 3 days after the hearing. I see it because a girl at the school shows me on her phone during lunch. This long caption about government overreach and loving families torn apart by jealous strangers. My old modeling photos fill the post, dozens of them. Me in designer clothes with perfect hair and that comp card smile. The comments explode within hours. Strangers argue about whether I look thin or abused, whether my parents are heroes or monsters, whether CPS destroys families or saves children. Someone shares it to a mommy blogger group, and suddenly it spreads to people who have opinions about my body, my face, my life. Kids at the school whisper when I walk past their tables. I hear fragments like, "That's her," and "I saw the post." And my mom says, "I want to fold myself smaller, and smaller until I disappear completely. Want to go back to the garage where at least the rules were clear and I knew how to survive them." My hands shake through the rest of lunch and I can't make them stop. After school, I go straight to my room and curl up in the corner, making myself as small as possible like I used to do when my mother was angry. Marlena finds me there 20 minutes later. She doesn't ask questions or try to fix it with words. She just sits down next to me on the floor and breathes slowly, in and out, until my breathing starts to match hers. We sit there for maybe 30 minutes. My panic passes gradually, like water draining from a bathtub, and I remember how to breathe normal again. The photographer's official statement comes through the detective a week later. Gregory tells me about it during one of our check-in meetings. The photographer provided behind-the-scenes photos I never knew existed, shots showing the bruises under my body makeup and my hair falling out in clumps between takes. I try to remember his name, but I can't. There were so many shoots, so many strangers positioning my body for better angles, adjusting my chin or moving my hands, or telling me to look more natural. He was just another adult in a room full of adults who saw me as a product. But he saw something else too. He saw enough to take photos and send them to CPS and give a statement that could be used in court. I don't know what to do with this information. My whole life I believed everyone benefited from my pain, that every adult in every room was complicit in keeping me marketable and quiet. This complicates everything. Cal says during our next session that complication is actually growth, that learning the world has more nuance than I thought is progress. But it feels like losing the only map I had. If some adults helped and some adults hurt, how do I know which is which? How do I trust anyone when the rules keep changing? Cal doesn't have easy answers. He just sits with me in the confusion and says that's okay. That not knowing is part of healing too. Marlena has a house rule about bathroom doors. They can't be locked for more than 5 minutes because of some foster care thing about safety checks. I don't think about it much until the first time she knocks. I'm in the shower and I hear the knock and suddenly I'm not in Marlena's bathroom anymore. I'm back in the garage. I'm back performing for clients who wanted access to everything, who treated my body like property they'd paid to see. I'm back being a thing without boundaries, a product without rights. My breath comes too fast and I can't slow it down. I slide down the shower wall and sit on the floor with water pouring over me. Marlena hears me breathing wrong. She opens the door just a crack and asks if I'm okay. I can't answer. She comes in and sits on the bathroom floor outside the shower, doesn't try to touch me or make me come out, just sits there and talks in this calm voice. She explains we can adjust the rule. We can find another way to keep me safe that doesn't feel like being watched. She says rules can bend around trauma instead of breaking people into pieces to fit them. We sit there until the water runs cold. Later we make a new rule together. The door can stay locked as long as I need, but I have to answer if she knocks. Just say something so she knows I'm okay. It's a small change, but it feels huge. I'm learning that safety doesn't have to mean giving up all privacy. That protection and boundaries can exist together if someone's paying attention to the difference. The nightmares start around week 3. They're always the same. I smell acetone from hair glue, that chemical smell that used to fill the bathroom before shoots. My mother's hands pull extensions tight enough to make my eyes water. She's saying 30 more seconds while my scalp bleeds. I'm 7 and I'm 10 and I'm every age I've ever been that involved her hands in my hair. I wake up gasping, my hands clawing at my head like the extensions are still there. Marlena appears in my doorway within seconds. She has a kit Cal gave us, this small box full of different things. She sits on the edge of my bed and opens it. There are little bottles with different scents, textures to touch, things that feel silly until they work. She teaches me to smell the lavender first, then count the cracks in the ceiling. 1 crack, 2 cracks, breathe, 3 cracks. I count 19 cracks total. She shows me how to press my thumb into the textured stone in the kit, how to feel the rough surface against my skin. The nightmare loosens its grip slowly. My breathing evens out. Marlena stays until I fall back asleep. The nightmares keep coming, but I get better at using the tools. I learn that waking up is different from surviving, that I can pull myself out of the past instead of drowning in it. Some nights I still smell the acetone, but now I can smell the lavender too, and the lavender is stronger. A reading person named Cami comes to do testing. She works with kids like me, kids who fell through the cracks. She sits across from me with a bunch of papers and asks me to read different things. The letters swim and flip like they always do. B becomes D, P becomes Q, words rearrange themselves into nonsense. After an hour, she uses terms I don't fully understand. Severe something and complete educational neglect. She explains my brain isn't broken, just different. The letters swim because of something called dyslexia, not because I'm stupid like I always thought. She shows me tools and ways to work with my brain instead of against it. Colored overlays that make the letters stay still. Special fonts that are easier to read. Techniques for breaking words into smaller pieces. I feel relief and sadness crash into each other inside my chest. All those years I thought I was too dumb to learn. All those times I failed to read scripts or call sheets and my parents got angry. It wasn't me being broken. It was them never teaching me. Never getting me help. Never caring if I learned anything except how to pose. Cami explains that my parents needed me unable to read. Needed me dependent on them to understand contracts and booking details and money. They kept me dumb on purpose so I couldn't see what they were doing. The anger comes later, after Cami leaves. I'm angry at them for stealing my education. I'm angry at myself for believing I was worthless. I'm angry at every adult who saw me struggle and did nothing. The bone doctor says no more heels. Ever. He's serious about it. Makes me understand this isn't a suggestion. He fits me for these ugly medical boots called CAM boots. They're bulky and graceless. Nothing like the beautiful shoes I wore for shoots. I stare at them sitting on the exam table. Those heels made me tall and elegant and worth booking. They made me look older, more professional, more valuable. These boots make me look like exactly what I am, a kid with broken feet. The doctor explains what the boots mean. Walking without pain later. Running maybe, jumping, normal kid things. I realize I've never run anywhere in my life except toward a camera. I've never jumped except when a photographer told me to jump and hold the pose midair. I've never done anything with my body just because it felt good. The boots feel like losing the last piece of my value. But maybe they're actually freedom. Maybe walking without pain is worth more than looking marketable. Maybe running toward nothing is worth more than posing for everything. I wear the boots out of the doctor's office. They're heavy and awkward. Marlena asks how they feel, and I tell her the truth. They feel like giving up and starting over at the same time. Gregory Payne sits across from me in his office and explains something I've never heard before. I have the right to say no. Not just to big things, but to everything. To questions from lawyers. To requests from social workers. To anyone who wants information I'm not ready to give. Just the word no, nothing else. I say it once and it comes out like a question. He tells me to try again. Number, again, number. He has me say it 17 times in a row. Each time it feels a little less like breaking a rule and a little more like using a tool I'm allowed to have. By the 17th no, I'm saying it with my whole chest. Gregory smiles like I've done something amazing. He explains this is what people mean when they talk about rights. Permission to have limits that adults will actually respect. Permission to protect myself without apologizing. I think about all the times I wanted to say no. No to the ice baths. No to the heels. No to the garage. No to the cameras. I never knew I was allowed. Gregory says I'm allowed now. He says practicing with him makes it easier to use the word when I really need it. We spend the rest of the session practicing different ways to say no. No thank you. No I'm not ready. No I don't want to. Just no. Each version feels like taking back a piece of myself I thought was gone forever. The modeling agency leaves a voicemail on Marlena's phone. She plays it on speaker so I can hear. They want to rebrand me. They talk about the overcomer story, how we could book campaigns about surviving and thriving. They use words like inspirational and powerful. They explain how much money there is in the trauma recovery market. I listen for 30 seconds before I reach over and delete it. Marlena doesn't stop me. Cal says later that deleting it was progress, but it feels like closing a door I spent my whole life trying to keep open. My worth was supposed to come from being marketable. That's what my parents taught me. That's what every booking and every client and every paycheck confirmed. Now I'm choosing to be unmarketable on purpose. I'm choosing to keep my trauma private instead of selling it. I don't know who I am without a comp card to define me. I don't know what I'm worth if I'm not earning money. Cal says I'm worth everything just for existing, but I don't believe him yet. Maybe someday I will. For now, I just know I'm done performing, done being a product, done letting strangers consume my pain for their inspiration. The agency can find another kid to exploit. I'm learning to just be a kid instead. Favor's update comes through Gregory a few days later. She's been let out of the hospital, but she needs a cane now for balance problems. Maybe forever. The guilt hits me so hard I can't breathe. My chest gets tight and my vision goes spotty and I have to sit down on the floor of Gregory's office. My father hurt her trying to protect me. She has permanent damage because I wasn't good enough at pretending everything was wonderful. She'll walk with a cane for the rest of her life because I existed wrong. Gregory talks me through the panic. He explains that my father's violence is his choice, not my result. He says Favor knew the risks and chose to protect me anyway. He says I'm not responsible for what my father did. But the guilt sits in my chest like concrete anyway. It's heavy and solid and I can't move it no matter how much I understand intellectually that it's not my fault. Cal spends our entire next session on this. He reframes it over and over. Your father hurt her. Not you. Your father's violence. Not yours. Your father's choice. Not your consequence. I hear the words, but they don't reach the place where the guilt lives. That place is deeper than words can go. I carry it with me everywhere. Every time I walk without a cane, I think about Favor walking with one. Every time I take a step that doesn't hurt, I think about her balance problems. The guilt doesn't go away just because I understand it's wrong. It sits there anyway, concrete in my chest, reminding me that someone else paid the price for my freedom. An anonymous note shows up in Marlena's mailbox 2 weeks later. Just one word written in block letters. Unmake. Marlena finds it and calls the police immediately. They come and bag it as evidence, dust the mailbox for prints, take photos of everything. I stand in the doorway watching and I taste metal. It's the same taste I had when they pulled my baby teeth early for that gap-toothed campaign. Copper pennies, blood and fear mixed together. My mother's whisper echoes in my head. We made you. We can unmake you. The police finish their work and leave. Marlena moves through the house, checking every lock on every door and window. I follow her and watch her padlock the garage from the outside. She's trying to protect me, but the locked garage sends me spinning. I'm back there, trapped, sleeping on concrete with no way out. My breathing changes. Marlena notices immediately. She stops what she's doing and looks at me. Really looks at me. Then she moves the padlock inside instead. Shows me how to open it from here. She explains that protection doesn't have to feel like being trapped if someone's paying attention to the difference. I hold the key in my hand. It's small and cold. The garage is locked, but I can unlock it anytime I want. I'm safe but not imprisoned. Protected but not trapped. It's a tiny difference, but it changes everything. I sleep that night with the key under my pillow, my hand wrapped around it. Proof that I can open doors now instead of just being locked behind them. The school district paperwork arrives 3 days later in a thick envelope that Gregory brings to Marlena's house. He spreads the documents across the kitchen table while I stand in the doorway watching him sort through pages. 0 records of me in any educational database for the past 4 years. No enrollment forms, no attendance sheets, no transcripts, nothing that proves I ever existed as a student anywhere. My mother submitted her own records to the court in response. Homeschool logs with perfect handwriting that detail daily lessons in math and reading and science. I lean over Gregory's shoulder to look at the attendance sheets and my stomach drops. My signature sits at the bottom of every page, neat loops and curves I've never made in my life. I can see where she practiced getting it right because the first few pages show slight variations before settling into a consistent forgery. She signed my name better than I could ever write it myself. Gregory points to the lesson plans, detailed curriculum maps that describe teaching methods and learning objectives, all fiction written in my mother's careful script. The proof of their planning sits in neat manila folders. Evidence that keeping me unable to read wasn't neglect. It was strategy. They needed me dependent. They needed me unable to understand contracts or check account statements or question anything they told me about bookings and earnings and what I was worth. The forged documents somehow feel worse than the ice baths because those were reactive, punishment for not being good enough. But this was methodical. This was them deciding years ago that my ignorance served them better than my education ever could. The court-ordered psychological evaluation happens in an office with certificates on the wall and a desk between me and the psychologist. She has kind eyes and a gentle voice, but the questions feel like traps. Can you read this paragraph? Can you write your full name and address? What grade are you in? When did you last attend a regular school? I use my one honest answer rule and admit I don't know to questions I should be able to answer at 10 years old. The shame burns in my chest, but I push through it because Gregory said honesty helps my case even when it hurts. She shows me a math problem and I stare at the numbers until they blur. She asks me to spell common words and I get 3 out of 10 right. She hands me a book meant for second graders and I stumble through one sentence in 5 minutes. Every failure gets documented with check marks on her form. The evaluation takes 2 hours and by the end I feel stripped bare. Every gap in my knowledge exposed and measured and recorded. The psychologist's report arrives a week later, and Gregory reads parts of it to me. Phrases like institutional trauma and systematic deprivation and severe educational neglect. The words make me sound like a case study in a textbook instead of a person. Gregory explains these clinical terms will help prove my parents' abuse in court, but I just feel exposed, like everyone will know exactly how broken and stupid I am. He tries to reframe it as documentation of harm done to me, not evidence of my failure, but the shame sits heavy anyway. The modeling agency's lawyer sends a letter to Gregory's office claiming Favor's report damaged their reputation and cost them valuable clients. The letter threatens legal action for defamation and demands retraction of all statements made to CPS and media. Gregory shields me from most of the legal language but explains they're trying to intimidate us into silence, trying to make the cost of speaking up too high to maintain. I feel this surge of protectiveness for Favor that surprises me with its intensity. She took a skull fracture because she wouldn't be silent about what she saw. She walks with a cane now because she kept pushing when my parents told her to leave. I ask Gregory if I can write her a letter and he says yes immediately. We sit together at his desk and he helps me dictate because I still can't write well enough to say what I mean. I tell her thank you for not leaving. I tell her I'm sorry my father hurt her. I tell her I'm learning to read now and maybe someday I'll be able to write my own letters without help. Gregory types every word exactly as I say it, and we print it on nice paper and mail it to the hospital where she's doing rehabilitation. The envelope feels important in my hands, proof that I can say thank you even when my hands can't form the words yet. Marlena takes me to the mall the following Saturday to buy new shoes now that my feet are healing. We walk through the bright corridors past stores with mannequins and windows, and I'm fine until we pass a shop with spotlights, the kind they use for shoots. Bright white light that washes out all the shadows and makes everything look clean and perfect and cold. My breath catches in my chest and suddenly I'm 7 years old sitting in an ice bath with my lips turning blue. I'm 8 years old in heels that pinch. I'm 9 years old holding poses until my muscles shake. Every age I've ever been that involved performing under lights crashes into me at once and I can't breathe. My vision tunnels. The mall sounds fade to ringing. Marlena notices immediately and crouches to my eye level right there in the middle of the shopping center. She doesn't ask what's wrong or tell me to calm down. She just starts counting floor tiles with me. 1 tile, 2 tiles, breathe, 3 tiles. Her voice is steady and calm and she counts slowly enough that I can follow. 4 tiles, 5 tiles, breathe, 6 tiles. People walk around us and stare, but Marlena doesn't care. She stays crouched at my level counting tiles until my breathing slows and the tunnel vision fades. 7 tiles, 8 tiles, breathe, 9 tiles. When I can finally speak, I whisper sorry, and she says there's nothing to apologize for. We sit on a bench for 20 minutes while I come back to myself and she doesn't rush me or act embarrassed. Public panic doesn't mean private shame if someone's willing to sit in it with you. The dermatologist appointment happens on a Tuesday afternoon. She needs to document my scalp damage for the medical records that will go to court. I sit in the exam chair while she sections my hair with clips and takes photos with a medical camera. Every click makes me flinch. Every flash sends my heart racing. But she explains these pictures are mine. For documentation, not distribution. For healing, not selling. She shows me the infected follicles on her computer screen, red and swollen where extensions pulled too hard for too long. She points out the permanent scarring, pale patches of scalp where hair will never grow back no matter what treatments we try. She names it traction alopecia from chronic extension use and writes it in my chart with codes and medical terminology. My body gets to be medical instead of marketable for the first time. Gets to be a patient instead of a product. She prescribes treatments for the infected areas and recommends a specialist for the permanent damage and treats my scalp like it matters beyond how it photographs. I cry in relief at being seen as something that deserves treatment rather than something that needs better lighting. The dermatologist hands me tissues and doesn't tell me to stop crying because it ruins my face. A neighbor kid knocks on Marlena's door the next day and asks if I want to draw chalk pictures on the driveway. I stand in the doorway frozen because I don't know how to play. Don't know what kids do when there's no camera and no client and no one directing the activity. The kid has a bucket of colored chalk and starts drawing without waiting for my answer. I watch from the porch as a lopsided dinosaur takes shape on the concrete. The kid looks up and asks if I'm coming and I step down slowly. I start to pose automatically, finding my angles even though there's no camera, turning my face to catch light that doesn't matter. The kid looks confused and just keeps drawing. I sit down on the warm driveway and pick up a piece of chalk. I draw my medical boots, the ugly ones that are helping my feet heal. I make them bright purple even though the real ones are gray. I add stars on the sides because I can. The kid looks over and says cool boots like they actually are cool, like my drawing has value just because I made it. It's the first picture I've ever created that wasn't for someone else's eyes. The first art that doesn't have to be marketable or perfect or anything except mine. The placement review hearing happens 2 weeks later in the same courthouse where all my other hearings have been. They mention possible move if safety risks escalate and my whole body prepares to perform perfection. To be easy and grateful and marketable enough to keep. To smile the right way and say the right things and prove I'm worth the trouble. But I remember Gregory's lessons about saying no. I remember Cal's teaching about authentic needs. When the judge asks if I have anything to add, I speak up before I can lose my nerve. I need to keep the bedroom lamp on at night. This tiny need that feels huge to voice. This small request that could make me seem difficult or demanding or not worth keeping. The judge writes it down in his notes like it matters. Marlena squeezes my hand under the table. The court approves the lamp staying on along with continued placement, and I learn that asserting needs doesn't always lead to punishment. Sometimes it just leads to a lamp staying on. Sometimes people adjust their rules to fit around your broken pieces instead of breaking you further to fit their rules. Gregory receives a package at his office from a stylist who worked several of my shoots years ago. Inside is a USB drive with behind-the-scenes footage she's been carrying guilt over since I was 7. Gregory previews it first and decides I shouldn't watch it. I trust his judgment. But I agree to describe what breaks were like on set, because my testimony helps build the case. Gregory records my voice while I explain. Standing still between takes. No sitting because it wrinkles clothes. No eating because it bloats and shows on camera. No bathroom because it wastes time and annoys clients. Just standing and waiting to perform again. My feet hurting in heels. My stomach empty and cramping. My mother's voice reminding me that complaining costs bookings. I hear my own voice explain my childhood like it happened to someone else. Like I'm describing a character in a story instead of my own life. Gregory says that dissociation probably saved me. That being able to separate myself from the experience is how I survived it. The recording goes into evidence, and I try not to think about strangers listening to my voice explain what breaks meant in my world. The detective calls Marlena's house 3 days later with news that changes everything. He obtained text messages between my parents from the week after my removal. They were planning to take me back after court. Discussing which relatives have addresses CPS doesn't know about. Mapping out how to disappear with me before the system could stop them. The texts are evidence of ongoing threat, and the judge responds immediately. Tighter bail conditions. GPS monitoring for both parents. Increased security protocols around all my locations. Marlena sits with me while she explains the new safety measures, and I feel simultaneously validated and terrified. My fear wasn't paranoia. They really were planning to unmake the rescue. Really were scheming to take me back to the garage and the ice baths and the shoots that never end. Being right about danger doesn't make you less endangered. It just proves the threat was real all along. School goes into soft lockdown the following Monday. My parents were spotted in the parking lot during morning drop-off, violating the restraining order, standing by the fence watching students arrive. Suddenly, there are protocols with my name attached to them. Teachers I barely know move me to an interior classroom with no windows facing the parking lot. The principal calls police while I sit at a desk that isn't mine, surrounded by kids who stare. I think about how much trouble I am, how much space my fear takes up, how many people have to adjust their day because I exist wrong. The lockdown lasts 40 minutes until police arrive and verify my parents are gone. My regular teacher walks me back to my classroom and the other students whisper when I pass. Cal reframes it later in our session. People are choosing to protect you, he says, choosing to take your safety seriously. But in the moment, it just feels like being the problem everyone has to solve. Like my existence creates chaos that spreads to everyone around me. Like maybe my parents were right that I'm more trouble than I'm worth. That same afternoon, Marlena sits me down in the kitchen and explains we have to move tonight. The detective called with intel that my parents hired someone to track my location, and the current address is no longer safe. I have 10 minutes to pack what matters most. I run to my room and grab the chalk dinosaur photo from the driveway, the one the neighbor kid drew with me. I take Marlena's oversized mug that I use for hot chocolate every night. I reach for the homework on my desk, half-finished spelling words, and my hand stops because I know I have to leave it behind. The bedroom where I finally learned to sleep without waking up cold every hour gets left behind too. Marlena loads 2 suitcases into her car, and we drive to an address she won't tell me until we get there. She promises we'll make new bedtime routines in the new place. New hot chocolate nights. New everything. I stare out the window and think about how safety keeps moving. How every time I start to trust a space, it gets taken away. Protection means losing the small things I just started to believe were mine. The new apartment is smaller with bars on the windows that make my chest tight. Marlena shows me which bedroom is mine, and I unpack the chalk photo and the mug, and that's all I have of the place where I was learning to be safe. 3 days later, I start at a different school where nobody knows my story yet. The teacher is younger than my last one, and she asks for volunteers to read aloud from the chapter book on her desk. Hands shoot up around the room. I say pass without the usual lie about loving reading. It feels like progress, but also like failure because everyone else volunteered and I'm still the broken kid who can't do basic things. The teacher nods and moves on without making it weird. After class, I meet with Cami in a small room with alphabet posters, and she hands me a simple book with big letters. I read one full sentence out loud, stumbling over every single word, sounding them out like I'm 5 years old instead of 10. Cami takes a photo of the page and tells me this is remarkable. I want to explain that kindergartners do this easily, that remarkable should mean something harder, but she's genuinely celebrating like I've accomplished something worth remembering. I let myself feel proud for maybe 5 seconds before the shame crashes back in. The next week, Gregory calls Marlena's phone and asks if I'm ready to give my statement for the criminal case. He outlines every option in careful detail. I can testify in court or not. I can do video recording or in person. I can have support people with me or go alone. I can answer prosecutor questions or submit a written statement. He lists each choice without pushing me toward any particular one. I tell him I'll do a recorded video statement, but only in a room that feels safe, not a courtroom. I want Cal there with me. I absolutely will not testify in front of a jury because I can't perform my trauma for an audience, even if it helps put my parents in prison. The prosecutor will be disappointed, but that's not my problem. Gregory writes down my boundaries and says he'll make sure they get respected. I learned that my comfort actually matters, even in a legal system that usually cares more about what other people need. 2 days after that, Favor shows up at the new apartment walking carefully with a cane. She moves slower than I remember, and her balance seems off. She sits down at Marlena's kitchen table and apologizes for things that aren't her fault. She says she's sorry for not knocking louder earlier in her career, for all the times she saw warning signs with other families but didn't push hard enough. I tell her you did knock, and I mean it completely. She's the one who kept coming back to my house. She brought the tablet with all that evidence. She took a skull fracture from my father because she refused to leave without making sure I was safe. We both start crying a little, and Marlena makes tea for all 3 of us. I learned that repair isn't about perfect timing or doing everything right the first time. It's about showing up even when you're both still hurt from what happened. The following Tuesday, I have my regular therapy session with Cal. I tell him something I've never said out loud to anyone. When I was 6, my parents took me to a dentist who pulled 4 of my baby teeth early because a client wanted a gap-toothed look for some campaign. Cal's face does something complicated. Not quite anger, but close to it. He writes something down and says he's making a referral to a dental specialist. I realize that some of my pain got so normalized I didn't even know it counted as abuse. The dentist examines my mouth 2 weeks later and explains the permanent damage to my adult teeth from those premature extractions. My bite is wrong. Some teeth came in crooked because they didn't have the baby teeth to guide them properly. I add this to the growing list of ways my body got treated like raw material instead of a child who needed protection. That same week, the modeling agency officially drops my parents as clients. The criminal charges made headlines, and suddenly the agency wants distance from the scandal. A gossip site leaks my initials within days, and comment sections explode with people debating whether my story is real or exaggerated. The school district blocks the website on all their computers. Marlena sets up parental controls on the internet at home so I can't see what strangers are saying about me. I feel protected and erased at the same time because my story is everywhere, but I'm not allowed to read how people are twisting it. Gregory explains this is temporary containment, not permanent silencing, but right now it feels like I'm still being controlled just by different people with supposedly better intentions. My parents file a civil lawsuit against CPS claiming wrongful removal and demanding my return. Talk radio picks up the story as an example of government overreach and parental rights violations. Gregory explains the likely outcomes over the phone. Nuisance suit, he says. Will probably get dismissed. Standard intimidation tactic. But I hear the radio clips anyway when Marlena accidentally leaves the car radio on. Hosts defending my parents' rights to raise me how they see fit. Callers arguing that successful child models prove the parents are doing something right. I start wondering if I'm the villain in someone else's version of this story. Cal works with me on holding two truths at the same time. Some people will always believe the wrong thing. That doesn't make my reality less real. On a Tuesday morning, I sit down with Cami and write my full first name correctly twice in a row without any help. She takes a photo of the paper like it's a museum-quality masterpiece. I keep that paper under my pillow when I get home and touch it at night when the doubts come back. Proof that I'm learning. Proof that my brain can do things I thought were impossible. It's just a name, my name, but it feels like claiming ownership of something that was always supposed to belong to me. The criminal statement recording happens in a child-friendly room at the courthouse with soft furniture and tissue boxes on every surface. They set up a ring light for video quality, and my chest immediately gets tight. I ask them to turn it off. They do it right away without arguing and switch to natural lighting from the windows. I tell my whole story in shadows instead of spotlights. My voice shakes but doesn't actually break. I answer questions about ice baths and garage floors and baby teeth pulled for aesthetics. When it's done, the ADA thanks me like I've given her something valuable instead of just bleeding my childhood into an official court record. 3 days later, a package arrives at the new address that nobody except Gregory and the court system should know. Inside are my old modeling shoes, the expensive ones with the designer label and the heels that are too high for a 10-year-old. There's a note tucked inside one shoe that says 30 more seconds. Police bag everything as evidence and dust for fingerprints. They match my father's. The restraining order violation means immediate legal consequences for him. I stare at those perfect shoes, remembering how they made me tall and valuable and in constant pain. I feel rage instead of fear for the first time since this all started. Gregory calls later and says anger is progress. I believe him because this fury feels clean and righteous. It feels like I'm finally allowed to be mad at what they did to me, instead of ashamed of what I couldn't prevent. The preliminary hearing happens on a Tuesday morning without me there, but Gregory goes and calls me after to explain what went down. Some of the charges got thrown out on technical stuff I don't really understand. Something about paperwork timing and evidence rules, but the big ones stuck. Criminal child abuse, educational neglect, and assault on a social worker all got bound over for trial, which Gregory says means the judge thinks there's enough proof to keep going. He tells me Favor testified and her hands shook the whole time, but her voice stayed steady, and the judge wrote down everything she said about finding me in the garage and my father's attack. My mother cried through the whole thing, Gregory says, doing that performance crying she used to do for clients when she wanted sympathy bookings, but my father just stared straight ahead like he was posing for a headshot. Neither of them looked sorry, Gregory tells me, just mad they got caught, and I think about how that's exactly right, because they never thought the rules applied to them. It's not the big dramatic justice I see on TV where everyone claps and the bad guys get dragged away in handcuffs. But Gregory explains it's still real consequences, still accountability, and I'm learning that justice in real life is messy and incomplete, but it still counts for something. 3 weeks later, there's another court date, and this time it's about me, about where I live and for how long. The judge reviews Marlena's home, the safety protocols at the new address, all my therapy progress and school attendance, and then he signs papers that Gregory explains mean extended foster guardianship. The stability plan gets filed with something called permanency language, which sounds fancy, but Gregory breaks it down simple. It means long-term, he says. Means I'm not getting shuffled around to different houses anymore unless something goes really wrong. Means this placement is meant to last. Marlena picks me up from Gregory's office after, and we stop at a frame shop on the way home, and she gets the court order put in a nice frame with my name on a little plate at the bottom. She hangs it in my room right next to the light switch where I'll see it every time I turn the lights on. This legal document that says I get to stay. And I start crying because I've never had anything permanent in my whole life except scars and bad memories. Marlena hugs me and says the crying is okay. Says happy tears count just as much as sad ones. And I think about how weird it is to cry because something good happened instead of because something hurt. The criminal case moves forward, but my parents' lawyer works out a deal to avoid going to trial, and Gregory explains what that means over the phone while I'm doing homework at Marlena's kitchen table. Probation for both of them. Mandatory parenting classes that teach them how to not be terrible. Required psychological treatment to figure out why they thought ice baths. And garage floors were acceptable and absolutely zero unsupervised contact with me for at least 2 years. Maybe longer depending on their progress. The civil lawsuit they filed against CPS gets dropped as part of the agreement, which Gregory says was always just a threat to scare people anyway. It's not prison. Not the dramatic sentencing where they get taken away in handcuffs and locked up forever like I sometimes imagined. But Gregory explains it's still accountability with teeth. Still consequences that require them to actually change instead of just saying sorry. The no contact order means I'm protected while they're supposedly becoming different people, and I feel cheated and relieved at the same time. This weird mix of wanting them punished harder, but also being glad I don't have to see them. Cal says during our next session that feeling two opposite things at once is totally normal. Says justice being complicated doesn't make it less real. And I try to believe him even though part of me wanted them to suffer the way they made me suffer. Another court date happens, and this one's about money. About all the earnings from my modeling that I never saw or controlled. The judge orders everything placed in something called a blocked trust account that my parents can't touch or access or borrow from, and suddenly I'm sitting in Gregory's office looking at bank statements that show numbers I didn't know existed. 6 figures, Gregory says. pointing at the total. Money I earned before I turned 10 by standing in heels and ice baths and perfect lighting. The statements show deposits from agencies and clients, hundreds of shoots worth of money that funded my parents' lifestyle while I slept on concrete and ate ice cubes to stay thin enough to book more work. I feel angry and relieved and sick to my stomach all at once because my childhood has a price tag now, a specific dollar amount that says this is what your pain was worth to them. This is what they got while you got stress fractures and bald patches and malnutrition. Gregory explains I'll get full control when I turn 18, that it's mine, and always was mine, and I try to imagine being 18 years old and adult enough to make decisions about money and life, but the future feels impossible and necessary at the same time. A letter arrives at Marlena's house from the modeling agency, not addressed to my parents but to me, and inside is a packet about new policies they're putting in place. Child Performer Protection Initiative, the header says in big professional letters, and the pages outline rules about working hours and required schooling and mandatory breaks and health monitoring. Favor's name appears in the consultant credits at the bottom, and Gregory explains she got asked to help write the policies because of her experience with my case. The agency never mentions my name anywhere in the materials, keeps it all vague and general, but I know these rules exist because of what happened to me, because someone finally noticed, and now they have to pretend they care. I feel cynical about it, about symbolic changes that won't give me back the years I lost. But there's also this small cautious hope that maybe the next kid gets caught sooner. Maybe these policies mean something for someone else even if they're too late for me. Cal reminds me during therapy that systemic change is slow and imperfect and still matters, that real reform happens in small steps, not dramatic sweeps, and I try to believe him even though these new policies feel like putting a band-aid on a broken bone. On a Saturday morning, I wake up and make a decision that feels huge even though it's technically small. I'm done with modeling. Completely done. Not taking a break or keeping my options open or waiting to see how I feel later. Just finished. Marlena helps me gather all my comp cards and portfolio books from where they've been stored in her attic, and we spread them out on the living room floor. Hundreds of photos of me at different ages looking perfect and marketable and exhausted. I keep one photo, just one, the headshot from when I was 9 where you can see the tiredness behind my smile if you know to look for it. That photo goes in a memory box as proof I survived being a product, evidence that this really happened and I made it out, and all the rest goes into storage boxes that Marlena tapes shut and labels with today's date. She asks if I'm absolutely sure about this choice, and I say yes with my whole chest. Say it loud and certain, and letting go feels like grief and relief twisted together into something I can finally carry. The comp cards that used to define my worth get packed away where they can't tell me who I'm supposed to be anymore, and I think about how weird it is to feel sad and free at the same time. Favor sends me a text message on a Wednesday afternoon while I'm at the school. Just 4 words that make me read it over and over. Proud of your nose, it says. And I save it in a special folder on the phone Marlena got me. A folder of messages to look at when I forget I'm allowed to have boundaries and make choices. Gregory tells me later that Favor went back to work part-time, that she's doing her own trauma therapy now to process what happened. And I think about how we're both learning to walk differently now. Her with a cane because of the skull fracture, and me without performing because I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not posing. We're both adjusting to bodies that got hurt protecting something important, both learning that surviving changes you in ways that don't just go away when the danger ends. Gregory says we're both survivors now, not just me, and I'm starting to understand that survival isn't something you do alone in a garage. It's something people do for each other, with each other. This whole network of choosing to show up even when it costs you something. After months of supervised visits where social workers watched every interaction, the court finally approves my first unsupervised play date, and the neighbor kid comes over on a Saturday to draw chalk pictures again. We sit on Marlena's warm driveway with a bucket of colored chalk between us, and draw dinosaurs and boots and houses with big windows that let in light. I take my cam boots off to feel the sun-heated concrete under my feet. This simple thing I never got to do during modeling because my feet were always locked in heels or wrapped in bandages. The kid asks why I'm smiling, and I realize I am. Not the comp card smile I learned to make on command, but a real one that uses different muscles in my face. Muscles I forgot existed. I say I don't know because I genuinely don't know what unprompted happiness feels like. Don't have words for this feeling of just existing without performing. But I'm learning what it means to smile because something feels good, instead of because someone's paying me to look happy. Reading progress happens slowly, and then suddenly. Months of intensive work with Cami building up to the moment where I write a full 1-page story without help. It's about a towel that actually fits all the way around a kid's body. Simple and short, but mine. My words arranged in my order saying what I want them to say. My teacher asks if she can post it on the classboard and I panic for a second. That old fear of being displayed. And judged and found not good enough. But then I realize she's celebrating me, not selling me. Showing my work because she's proud, not because it's marketable. There's a difference between visibility as exploitation and visibility as acknowledgement. And I'm learning to tell them apart, even when my brain wants to make everything feel like a transaction. The story stays up for 2 weeks and kids tell me they liked it. Just casual mentions in the hallway or at lunch. And I'm learning that being seen doesn't always mean being consumed. Sometimes it just means people noticed you did something and thought it was good. The orthopedist clears me to stop wearing cam boots after months of healing and building strength in feet that spent years compressed in heels. Marlena takes me shopping for real shoes. Sneakers I get to pick based on how they feel instead of how they photograph. And we walk through the store looking at options. We pass a display of heels and I stop completely. Frozen. Staring at them like they're a test I might fail. I remember how heels made me tall and elegant and valuable, how clients specifically requested them, how my parents bought expensive pairs, and made me practice walking in them until my feet bled, and for a second I want to try them on just to see if I still know how. Marlena doesn't rush me or drag me away or tell me what to feel, just stands next to me and waits while I make a choice. I turn away from the heels and walk toward the sneakers, choose comfort over aesthetics for maybe the first time in my life. And I learn that temptation doesn't have to mean surrender. Sometimes it's just a memory you get to leave behind while you pick something better. The family center where they schedule the visit smells like fake flowers and floor cleaner, nothing like Marlena's house or the garage. A social worker sits in the corner with a clipboard, watching everything, and my parents arrive separately because the court order says they can't be together without supervision. My mother brings a designer jacket, the kind clients use to provide for shoots, and tries to put it on me, but I leave it on the chair between us. She switches to her client voice, asking about school and saying my sneakers are cute, and I answer with the truth instead of performing. School is hard. I'm learning to read. These are my comfortable clothes. Her face does something complicated, like she's trying to process a version of me that doesn't know how to be marketable anymore, and I watch her struggle to find the right response when I won't give her the script she's expecting. My father sits across from us and barely talks, just stares at his hands, and I realize his power only worked when I was small enough to unmake. I'm growing into someone he can't reshape anymore. Someone who says no and means it. Someone who chooses sneakers over heels and truth over performance. The hour passes slowly, and when the social worker says time's up, I stand without waiting for permission, and walk out first. That night the nightmare comes, but only once, instead of every night like before. The smell of acetone and my mother's hands pulling extensions tight enough to make my scalp bleed. I wake up gasping, but I don't scream for Marlena. Just reach for the lavender sachet Cal gave me and breathe in the smell until the garage fades. I count ceiling cracks, 1 through 17, and touch the textured blanket Marlena bought specifically because it grounds me. The garage is a memory, not a destination, I tell myself, and some nights I even believe it. I still wake up cold sometimes, but I can pull a real blanket over myself now, thick and warm, and the difference between then and now gets clearer even when my brain tries to blur them together. On Tuesday, we're walking to the library when I see it. My own face on a billboard from 2 years ago. Some campaign still running even though I don't model anymore. My breath stutters in my chest and I stop walking completely, frozen on the sidewalk staring up at that girl who looks happy. I remember that shoot. Remember the ice bath that morning to make my skin pale enough. Remember my mother yelling between takes because I couldn't hold the pose long enough. The disconnect between the image and the reality makes me dizzy, like I'm splitting into two people, the product on the billboard and the kid standing here in sneakers. I pull out my phone with shaking hands and text Cal. Use the crisis plan we practiced for moments like this. He calls back within a minute and talks me through grounding, his voice steady and calm while I count things I can see. 5 cars, 3 trees, 1 billboard with my face that isn't really me anymore. He stays on the phone until I can breathe normally again, until I can walk past my own commodified face without disappearing into it. The letter arrives on Friday, delivered to Marlena's house even though my mother isn't supposed to know this address. My hands shake holding the envelope, seeing her handwriting, and Marlena finds me staring at it in the kitchen. She offers to return it unopened, and I choose that. Choose not to read whatever performance of remorse or manipulation is inside. The detective comes within an hour and bags it as evidence of restraining order violation, and I feel powerful for the first time. Powerful enough to refuse access to my own thoughts. Cal says later that choosing not to engage is different from being silenced, and I'm learning that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who only know how to hurt you. The court review happens 9 months after the doorbell rang, and I sit in the waiting area while Gregory talks to the judge about my progress. When they call me in, the courtroom feels huge and official, nothing like the family center with its fake flowers. The judge asks if I feel safe, and I say yes without performing the answer, without checking my angles or smoothing my voice into something marketable. Just yes because it's true most days now, because Marlena's house has locks on the inside, and meals without punishment, and a bedroom where I get to sleep above ground. Gregory reports that I'm thriving in placement, that the trauma symptoms are decreasing, that I'm building skills for future independence, and the judge extends guardianship with permanency language that means I'm not getting moved again. Favor invites me to read at a support group in her office, and I write 3 paragraphs about what it feels like to learn your body belongs to you. My voice shakes reading it aloud but doesn't break, and when I finish, other survivors nod like they understand. My story isn't just evidence or entertainment anymore, it's connection. It's proof that other people survive too, and we're all learning how to exist without performing. Favor sits in the back with her cane and smiles at me like I've done something brave, and I smile back because maybe I have. Maybe using your voice after it's been stolen counts as courage even when your hands shake holding the paper. Marlena throws a small celebration that Tuesday. Cupcakes instead of kale chips and balloons instead of ring lights. She gives me a new towel embroidered with my name in letters I can finally read, and I cry a little because I've never owned anything that was just mine before. Nothing that wasn't for shoots or clients or making me more marketable. We don't celebrate survival because that feels too heavy. Just celebrate Tuesday. Celebrate being 10 years old and allowed to eat sugar and make a mess. The neighbor kid comes over and we play a board game I don't know the rules to, and losing feels fun instead of dangerous. I'm learning that childhood is supposed to include joy without performance metrics attached. That playing isn't practice for anything. It's just playing. The school project asks us to sign our names on a corkboard for a community art piece, and I write my full name legibly without help or shame. I pin it up without asking if it's marketable, without checking angles or lighting, just my name among other names like I'm a regular kid who belongs here. My teacher takes a photo for the school newsletter and asks permission first, and I say yes because this photo is about participation, not perfection. I'm learning the difference between being documented and being exploited, between someone capturing a moment and someone selling my image to strangers who think they own pieces of me. 10 months after the doorbell rang, I'm sitting in my room with the door locked from the inside and the lamp on because I asked for it to stay on. The ring light stays unplugged in the closet, a relic of a life I survived but don't have to return to. Favor is back at work part-time with a cane and trauma therapy, learning to walk again after my father's violence. My parents are in court-ordered treatment with no contact allowed, supposedly learning to be different people, though I don't know if that's possible. Marlena is downstairs making dinner that I'll eat slowly without punishment. Real food that I get to taste instead of ice cubes and empty promises. I can write my name and read simple books and wear comfortable clothes and say no when I need to. Nothing is perfect. I still have nightmares sometimes, still flinch at camera flashes, still struggle with trust and food, and believing I'm allowed to take up space. But everyone is better than when that doorbell rang. I'm safer. Favor is healing. The system made changes, however small, and I'm learning that recovery isn't about erasing what happened. It's about building a life where the past doesn't own the future. I'm 10 years old and learning to be a child instead of a product, and some days that feels like enough. That's where we'll wrap up for today. I know these stories can be heavy, but they're important to share. If you felt something while listening, go ahead and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more stories that stick with you. See you next time, friends.